I'd like to welcome everybody tonight at our special meeting of the Destin City Council, June 28, 2018. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We don't have a pastor designated here tonight, so if you'd all stand, we'll give a moment of silence, and then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. For those in the audience, we didn't request anyone to fill out any cards. At some point in this discussion, maybe a couple different times, I'll open this up for anyone to come to the podium to speak during the course of the discussions. This is a special meeting that I called, and the reason I called this meeting is to establish a clear direction on the commitment, strategy, and timeline for the Heritage Park / Gateway to the harbor. I want our focus to be on the project itself, the design, and look at maybe possibility, the idea of a budget, whether we even want to have one or some of the requirements behind that. And the goal of this special meeting is to improve the governance of this council to make these decisions in a clear, transparent, defensible, and public process to prevent confusion, angst, inefficiencies, and produce a policy or plan that we're satisfied with in the end. So, to do that, and we don't have a set agenda, I basically, in my mind, have an idea that I'm going to ask 3 questions. And when I ask those questions, I'm fishing for a motion to answer those questions. And once we get a motion in a second, then we'll have discussion on all 3 of those questions. Depending on how we answer question number 1, we may adjourn this meeting. So my first question is, do we want to continue the park construction and the plan? And if so, I'd like to have a motion to that effect. If the vote is yes, we'll move on to number 2.
Mr. Mayor, could you repeat that? I'm sorry. As planned, you say?
Do we want to continue the park, developing the park and the property, not as planned, not as the plan that was presented, but the plan that started this in 2007?
Okay, yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead. So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you clarify what you mean as whatever plan it is you mean?
Certainly. The little article I gave you from the past, in 2016, when they voted to proceed with the Heritage Park, I think at that time it was a 30% or a 60% plan. So the plan wasn't done. The vote was actually taken whether to keep moving forward with developing the park. So maybe I should take out the word plan and just say continue forward developing the property for the Royal Melvin Heritage Park / Gateway.
Thank you for clarifying, because I took plan as in design plan.
It's confusing, and that's what we're here to stop. Mr. Braden.
I think that clarified it. I just want to make sure this was, do we want to keep moving forward with designing this park, or actually continue to build this park? Or that's the way I got it. Thank you.
And that's what I'm asking for. Do we want to move forward? Okay, so would anyone else like to weigh in? Well, let's go ahead and take a vote whether we want to.
Actually, Mayor, you have to give an opportunity for public comment before each motion is voted on tonight, just because no one filled out the blue cards, and you pointed that out, that no one had opportunity to do so. So if anyone in the public would like to make any comments on it before they vote.
That's why you're the city attorney, sir, to keep me in line. Is there anyone out there in the public that would like to weigh in on that question? Do you think the city of Destin should move forward with development of the Heritage Park / Gateway to the harbor? Come forward, sir.
Thank you. I am Mike Chesser. I represent the Destin fishing fleet and have for, I guess, 35 years or 40 or whatever. And let me just say, I don't want to take, and I will not take more of your time. I may be here or may not at some other point in your meeting, but we do have a contractual right, we think, to have the answer be yes. And I mean, it's put to you as if the answer might be no, and hopefully you will reaffirm that in fact that's what you intend to do. We, the Destin Fishing Fleet, were standing in a position when we were developing the property, I'm sorry, after the fishing fleet had been developed, but when Mr. Melvin was offered a price to purchase his property, and we, the fleet, held a first right of refusal, that we didn't do that casually. We had a meeting with the fleet to say a park is something that helps everybody. We think the Destin Fishing Fleet helps everybody, but even if there are those who think it does not, we think the park certainly does. And we do think it helps the Destin Fishing Fleet, and for you all to have used the state funding that you had then, and hopefully still have, to help us take that step forwards, that rather than for that property to be integrated within the parcel they had already purchased and developed and were then using, they took a step back and said, fine, you've got the money, you've got the idea, let's go with that idea. But a part of their quid pro quo, if you will, was for them to say, we have got to have the bathrooms on the beach, that we can't get all those people down here and keep asking them to come and they use the facilities that the Destin Fishing Fleet has, because it's just not fair. It's not fair to us, it's not fair to all those people. Let's get on with it. So for us, the answer is certainly yes, and the answer would have been yes 3 or 4 years ago, and it's still yes tonight. So I don't want to slow you down. I want to speed you up if I do anything. I will not bother you tonight, except to be here if there's anything I can say that will add any information to the information that you need.
Question. Mr. Chesser, are you saying that the Destin Fishing Fleet has a contractual right in the land that's now going to be the park, and that the fishing fleet has an expectation that the bathrooms will be built? Is that the only contractual obligation that you're saying?
Our expectation was that it be what we all thought it was going to be, but if you told me you were not going to build a park, we're going to put the bathrooms open them to the public and do in spirit the same kind of thing you began, I don't know that they would have a serious issue with that. I know we all thought when we said to you, you buy it, we take a step back and let you do that the park is what was coming.
And, just attorney, if I call you up, do you have like that in writing, or was that oral, or is it in writing?
No, there is an agreement that was put together at that time, but the amended lease agreement that was in place with Mr. Melvin, when the city made arrangements to buy that property, the city did that with an amendment to its lease agreement that said, here's what we're going to do, here's what you're going to do, here's what the Destin Fishing Fleet gets out of the deal. It's all very public record.
Okay. I might give you a call and see if you can shoot that over to me at a later point in time.
I think I have it here tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chester. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and hit that button. Kill that thing. Mr. Destin.
I'll do it. Dewey Destin, 777 Spring Lake. Just to clarify for me what the motion is doing, I'm still not quite clear. Are you going to reverse what the decision was made at the last joint meeting, that you had some design things you were going to tweak? Is that what you're doing?
No, sir. No, sir, we're not trying to change anything that was discussed during the CRA joint meeting, and then, the CRA advisory panel meeting, and then the CRA meeting afterwards. All I'm trying to do is get on public record this council's commitment to build a park.
Okay, that's the only question I had. Turn it off?
Thank you, sir.
And Mayor, just, I guess, because of that, could you maybe have Ray read the motion back to y'all before y'all vote on it?
I think that'd be absolutely perfect. Ray, would you like to read that motion back to us, please? Or I can, you made the motion, right?
Sorry. Motion for, to move forward with the development of the Heritage Park / gateway to the, harbor. I'm sorry, I couldn't read my handwriting.
You wrote that, right? All right, is everyone absolutely positively clear on the language of the motion, the second? We've heard from the, a few members of the community. Would anyone like to further discuss or make another comment? If not,
I do just have one point. If y'all do want to redesign the elements of the park, you might want to change the verbiage of the motion, since verbiage of motions is very big issue right now, to say that y'all intend for a park to eventually be constructed, as opposed to saying that you want to move forward with the construction of the park, just because that could lead to some confusion down the line. And since y'all are still trying to suss out what the plans are, that would lead to a clearer motion.
thank you, Mr. Burns. If the vote is yes, that was part of my second question, for more clarity as far as wanting to have that capability to change the plans, and with council approval, you'll see that. So,
Can I say one thing?
with his suggestion, does anyone does anyone think that's acceptable to the person that made the motion in the second? Because basically are you just wordsmithing the motion, Jeff?
Just wordsmithing it, pulling it back a step, because moving forward with construction is different than you intend for it to be built, because if you move forward with construction, that can imply it's shovel-ready already, which it's not.
I think its motion was to move forward with a park, not construction. That was,
Ken?
Reread it again. This is, the whole purpose of this meeting is for clarity, so let's be clear.
the initial motion was to move forward with the development of a Heritage Park / gateway to the harbor.
That is very clear, okay? Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's cast your vote. The vote is unanimous, and so moved. So today, in public record, we have the commitment as a council to build a park / gateway. So that leads me to my second question. If yes, who will have primary design responsibility? Who will have final approval? And I'd like to formulate that in a motion if someone would like to take a stab at it. The question is, if yes, and we've answered that we are going to develop this piece of property into a park, who do we want to have the primary design responsibility, and who will have final approval? And I'm sure all of us here understand that question and why we want to answer that question.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Are you talking about design and I hate to keep mixing these words up, and not trying to mix them up, but are you talking about the final design? I would like for the city council, and I'll make a motion that the city council be the final approval of it, but I don't know about this design thing. You want to break that up? I would appreciate it.
Because as we discussed in it, not we, because I had to sit on the sidelines, but during the CRA advisory panel, they felt fairly slighted because they didn't feel like they had a fair amount of input on the design. So there's a component there. There's people on this council that don't feel that they had a fair amount of input on the design beyond, as we can see, timeline-wise, beyond the 60% plan. So what I'm trying to do here is get clarity on who will have primary responsibility on the design process, and then who will have final approval of the finished product.
Okay, in keeping with that, if we could break that up, because the design sometimes gets into actually engineers and things like that. So,
Yes.
We're talking about, as far as the city council, I feel like needs to be the ones for sure to have the final approval.
Maybe a good word to put in this would be conceptual design.
Okay, I would make a motion that the city council would have final approval of the conceptual design of the park and the final approval on the park design, I guess.
Point of clarification, is that prior to submitting the application?
Prior to any application being submitted, yes.
City manager.
Yes, sir, and I'm sorry to ask for further clarification. When the grant approval to submit back in 2016, which Mr. Burns had provided to you, the rest of the process was providing additional documentations and components to the application process. However, a development order at 100% design and award to accept the grant has to come before council. So council would have had and still has the authority at 100% design to review and approve the 100% design and to accept and award a grant. If neither one of those things did not happen, we would not go forward. The process since 2016 has been the 30 and the 60 and the 90. The 90% is what was provided to the county to be submitted to the Treasury, understanding that they were going to award the grant based on the plans, but those were not final plans. Final plans would come before council automatically at 100% before DO application was approved or award grant was received. So I hope that clarifies.
That does. So that,
That actually, I met with the Restore Act coordinator, and that conflicts, and she said she's the person who actually fills out our application and hits the submit button. She actually said, if y'all want to make any changes to the design, she strongly suggests that you send over the 100% plans to them, and that y'all have plenty of time to do that. So I wouldn't mince words. I think just moving forward, let's forget about everything in the past and just say, if y'all want to get plans that of a park you've designed, get them 100% done and turned over to them.
yes, because the biggest confusion during this whole process was somewhere between the 60 and 90% plan. So that's what I want to put behind us and stay focused now on, we've already decided we're committed to it, to see it through. So that's why I want clarity on who's going to help get us from somewhere between 60 and 90%, who's going to be the main responsibility, and as the city manager just pointed out, we'll have final approval. So apparently we won't need a motion to that effect.
This motion does not hurt that. If somebody wanted to second it, just reemphasizes it.
Okay.
It doesn't, I don't care. Yeah.
For clarity, Ray, could you reread Mr. Dixon's motion?
The city council will have the final approval of the conceptual plan and the final approval of the final plan prior for any applications being submitted.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion, we got a second, and Mr. Braden, or no, Mr. Overdeer, you are.
I'm so sorry that,
Oh,
I'm sorry, Mr. O'Day. In that, I said something about the final design as well. Would council would have approval over the final plan and the final design. So I think that's where we were both going with that, and I didn't hear that out of that repeated motion, but I wanted to set the record straight, make sure that we didn't have any mince of words or any problems with the wording or verbiage or anything else. Not there won't be, but we tried.
correct. I appreciate that clarification, Mr. Dixon. So, Mr. Overdeer.
Okay, so I think Tuffy's motion then fulfills the second half of your request. But I thought that at the last meeting that we had, when we had the joint meeting, that what we decided was we were going to send the whole thing kind of back to the CRA Advisory Committee. They were going to come up with whatever changes they wanted to make, whether it was switchbacks or whether it was whatever it was. And then they would bring that plan back to us. We'd see that one more time, and then if we both agreed that that was what we wanted to do, then we would have Tetra Tech draw up the plans. I guess those would be the, I don't know, 90% plans or whatever. And then they would bring those back to us and we would approve those. So, I mean, so that's I think the whole thing, to answer both sides of your question, is that the CRA Advisory Committee is the one that's going to actually come up with the initial design or redesign or whatever they're going to do. They're going to bring it to us. We're going to sign off on that. And then we'll send that to Tetra Tech. Tetra Tech will then make the 90% plan or design, and then we'll sign off on that, and then that's what we'll send forward.
Let's get away from those percentages in this particular case if we can. I think the CRA Advisory Board is an advisory board. They had some issues with the design, the 90% design. They asked to be able to review it and make some recommendations to the council. I don't think that this motion changes that
This
previous
motion's
action.
like a broad brush. Y'all are just making it clear that before a plan gets submitted to the county, the forward on to the state, that it's gone through everything that y'all are going to talk about probably after this motion's voted upon.
Mr. Mayor, do we have a second on this?
Yes, and Mr. Braden is next. I do want to ask Jeff, so my question or my comments to Mr. Oberdeer that this vote on this motion does not prevent this council or the CRA from handing the plan and asking for input from the CRA advisory panel.
No, and it's not inconsistent at all with what y'all voted on 2 weeks ago. That plan but I guess we can talk about that after y'all vote on this, because I think there was direction to Tetra Tech to come back with a quote too in the interim, not just kind of sit and wait. So I'd wait for that.
Mr. Braden.
Thank you. That was one point that I was going to make, that they're supposed to bring us back a price on that. And that would be my preference, that it go back to the advisory board. They make some changes to it, bring it back to us, so we can approve it and then have it put on paper. My personal opinion is, or my personal thought is that, I mean, I'd love to see Tetra Tech pulled off this project 100%. I think they have robbed the city long enough. I mean, they charged us $10,000 to take those bathrooms and turn them 90 degrees. They already had them designed. They just had to turn them 90 degrees. They charged us just under $10,000 for that. So anyway, that would be my preference. Get them off of it 100%. But anyway, that was, and I'd like to see it when the final design is approved. I think it would be appropriate to have a workshop or whatever and have it up here, nice rendering of the park, and get the public's input on it. Not necessarily I don't want to make huge changes to it or anything, but just kind of get a public's input on it.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea to do when the CRA advisory panel meets, so we can do it early in the game versus late, because we don't want to work for months, get a conceptual plan, have an architect draw it, put it before the community. Of course, not everybody's going to like every aspect of any plan, no matter what. So I think to allow the public to feel like they've had a say in it, as well as the advisory panel, that would be probably the time and place. After we decide this particular, take a vote on this particular motion, if we were to entertain what you talked about, Mr. Braden, about Tetra Tech, that would require probably something we need to do at the next council meeting and put out an RFP and all that. It's not like we don't have time. Or unless, I just would rather probably not like to entertain that at this special meeting.
I agree.
To give them an opportunity.
Get that as my thought. I mean, I've built my own homes, and I can have a 5,000 square foot home designed by an architect and engineered by an engineer for less money, for $10,000. And all they did was turn the bathroom 90 degrees and charge the city $10,000.
You're an expert in the field, so I understand your concern. But I think that's probably something, if that's the will of the council, that I guess we'll put that on the next agenda.
I would not vote on that tonight, whether or not to remove a contractor from the job, just because the narrow scope of this meeting, they might cry foul. You need to set that for a regular meeting.
And they need to be noticed so they can defend themselves. So, but you've said it publicly. It's on public record, so buyer beware on their account. So we have a motion and we have a second, and we've had discussion. Does anyone in the audience would like to weigh in on this particular concept as far as the intent of this council? Mr. Buckingham.
Mike Buckingham, 510 Calhoun Avenue. Yeah, my question was, when you asked the question, I just wanted to make sure, or was hoping that it would come back to the CRA Advisory Committee before, but y'all have made that clear, it will come back to us.
This is the final design, the end run. All it's saying is we're going to be the ones making the decision.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no further discussion, let's go ahead and take this to a vote. The vote is unanimous. Ayes have it. So moved. I almost put your comments, Mr. Braden, as item number 4, but we've agreed not to do that. So my last question, and I would like this made in motion form too, is who will represent the city in dealing with the county, state, or other responsible parties at the direction and will of this council in future meetings or things that take place. And I would just like, in the city charter, it states that one of the responsibilities of the mayor is to represent the will of this council in public proceedings. It's also a responsibility of the city manager if the mayor cannot do that. And of course, that would mean in certain circumstances the mayor pro tem. If the mayor couldn't participate, it would represent. But it would all be to represent the will of this council. And that's the whole purpose of tonight's meeting, is whoever represents the city of Destin in a meeting, whether it's a county commission meeting in front of the DEP or stuff like that, I would like some clarity of who this council would like to do that, and I'd like to do that in a motion form so we can have a discussion.
I'll kind of clarify it for you. You got to do it on a case-by-case basis. The city manager has certain charter powers. You have certain charter powers. If you make a blanket motion at the start without anticipating the issues that are going to arise in the future, then right now there's probably no need to go back before any public hearings at this point in time with other governmental agencies. The city manager has enough administrative authority to do things like have the meetings at the state level like she's had before in the past on this. And technically, also to kind of clarify, your powers under the charter, you have your ceremonial powers on behalf of the city of Destin, but they still have to vote to give you direction, and that does actually create an issue for you compared to the city manager, because if you were voted to be the sole representative in a situation, if it's determined that you have negotiating ability, then you can also solely be subject to sunshine laws. Anywhere you go, the notice follows year round. So I would caution on making a blanket ruling at this point in time and let the city managers kind of still run what she's been doing before.
Okay, but I do want to ask that question, and if in your opinion, we don't need to do this in motion form, I still would like to hear from the council members on this particular issue. Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. And I have a motion that I've put together. May help with this, clarify more. I move to clarify my motion that passed on June 18, 2018, to ratify all actions of our city attorney to prevent submission of the Heritage Park grant application over the last few weeks, and to provide authority moving forward for our city attorney to do whatever is necessary to prevent the filing of the Heritage Park grant application prior to this board voting on a final set of design in the near future. I want this motion to include the following. The city attorneys acted on this board's behalf, and he and his firm's actions to prevent the application from being submitted without this council's redesign is hereby ratified by the passes of this motion. As a part of the clarification, I recognize that the city attorneys acted in accordance with the motion by notifying the county commissioners on June 19th that the Destin City Council wanted and still wants to hold or abate the application pending this board's redesign of the park, and that this board still desires to redesign the park. The city attorney is hereby directed to do whatever is necessary going forward to make sure any other governmental agencies or entities does not submit, accept, or process any Heritage Park grant applications before the City Council votes on the final design of Heritage Park at some point in time in the near future. The city attorney can present to any government agencies or entities that he is acting on the Destin City Council's behalf as the council's attorney when he is performing any actions he is deemed necessary to prevent the filing of the Heritage Park grant application. The city staff shall assist him in any way if he requests staff's assistance.
Is that a motion or a declaration?
That is a motion.
We have a very long, arduous motion, and do you think we could wordsmith it down to where the true intent and purpose is made, and we could still understand where we're going?
Well, it's pretty clear, and there's really no way to, and we have a bad problem with interpretation. I really don't think there's any way to interpret this in any other fashion. I know it's long, but I think it's to the point.
I think I could interpret, like, if you were asking earlier for some sort of direction, I guess my little sliver and all of it would be, I just make sure no one submits an application until this board has voted on the final design of the plans. Other than that, that's it. That's kind of...
And Ed said it several times.
That's what I was kind of poking at. Right? Can we use that version? Would that be satisfactory? Jeff? No, you can't make a motion, but you're...
Let's see how Ray took down my version, I guess. That's yeah.
Basically, you said no one can submit an application until this board has voted on the final plan and the final design.
And the city attorney will have authority to communicate with any other governmental agency to make sure no application is filed without this board having voted and approved of the final design plans at an open public meeting.
Let's do this by Robert's Rule of Order. We have a motion. Wordsmith down, I hope. Do we have a second?
I'll second it for discussion, absolutely.
We have a second, and now we can discuss this. And maybe seeing how you're not supposed to make motions, Jeff, maybe what we can do is try to take comments from city attorney, the intent and the verbiage that Mr. Braden did, have a discussion on it, and maybe we could parse out into a secondary a motion and accept that. So the first one up was Mr. Overdeer, and then I got Mr. Marlar, and then Ms. Dixon.
Okay, the only thing I guess I need a little bit of clarification on it is, we're not trying to usurp or take any powers or any authority away from the city manager. The city manager still functions just like the city charter says that she will. And so, I mean, the whole process is still going to be submitted by the city manager and the staff. It's all going to be, that's what's going to be set forward. They're the ones that are going to do the documents or the, whatever they're doing. I mean, that's just their normal job. And I guess what the attorney is doing is just kind of protecting our interests so that it doesn't go forward until we sign off on it, which we pretty much made the motion and everybody agreed that that's not going to happen. So we've got that. I just want to make sure that we're not trying to do anything with to put the city attorney in the position of the city manager.
I would not be comfortable doing that. The verbiage I gave Ray meets your intent.
Mr. Dixon.
I thought you said it was Mr. Marlar first, but I'm here. I'm going to throw this out and I was trying to throw it out before the second of the thing because it really doesn't have anything to do with the motion that was made by Mr. Braden, but I'm going to throw it out. I would like to have our city land use attorney, our city attorney, our city manager, and I guess you, Mr. Mayor, sit down and close doors behind the scenes and maybe work on some of the issues that we have. And what I say that is that there's been, I feel like, some hurt feelings. I think that people have stepped over their bounds, and I think maybe by sitting down and communicating, some of that stuff could get worked out. I know this, that I can feel the tension, and if I can feel the tension, I know everybody else can as well. So I would ask that before we even really went down this path with this thing, is that see if we can sit down, or y'all can sit down and talk this thing through and come back to us with something that we can use to not, I don't want to do anything to exclude our city manager, and I definitely don't want to do anything to exclude our city attorney. So I would hope that maybe we could sit down and come up with some viable solutions to some of the issues that we're facing, and then come back to us with some sort of a recommendation as to who is going to do what. And, we can make the motions and every resolutions up here all day long, but, ultimately, our city has run pretty good for a long time in the way it has run. So I'd like to see us give them a chance to sit down at a table, work out any differences they may have, and come back to us with some sort of a solution.
I appreciate those comments, because that's the motivation behind this special meeting, is to try to overcome some of that and to provide on the public record a nice, clear direction for us to stay focused on the development of this project. So I appreciate those comments, and I'd be more than welcome to do that.
If we vote on this tonight, though, just so you know, we're basically, I feel like we're kind of almost sidestepping our city manager, and I don't want to do that. But I do know that legally our city attorney has to be involved. So that's why I bring up what I bring up, and I'm hoping we might could delay this until we can get some things worked out behind the scenes. But now, if you want to vote tonight, we can vote. Don't matter.
All right, Mr. Marlar. Thanks, Mr. Dixon.
Okay. Since I'm now the senior person on council, since I'm second, I'll be second on how many years I've been on this thing. Yeah, it does, because I've been through these processes over and over again. I've been through many city managers. The charter clearly states that we have a city council, city manager form of government. Therefore, he, whoever is the city manager, is the first person. Then the city attorney. The city attorney, and nothing against the city manager or our current city attorney, the city attorney is our advisory attorney for us to stay out of trouble with sunshine laws and all the other fun stuff, and to assist the city manager and the staff in whatever is needed to be done. Tuffy is basically on point in the fact that, you know, what we're trying to do is circumvent the city manager in some senses because, again, we are legislative. We are not administrative. That's been the main problem I have seen since I've been on this council. We try to micromanage something that we're not supposed to be micromanaging because every one of us on this thing is of a diverse career, whatever. You know, Tuffy has been a fire chief. I'm an electrician. I'm a jack of all trades in a lot of different things. Parker's an attorney and a restaurant owner. Chatham, I could go on. But the point being, we are legislative. We make the policy, then the city manager is charged with implementing that policy. If it includes the city attorney, which most times it does, because if those policies have legal ramifications, the city attorney and the city land use attorney, just like Tuffy said, is supposed to be the one. Then, when this charter was when the city was first founded, the mayor had nothing. The mayor came and gave a report and sat out in the audience, believe it or not. And we changed the charter to give the mayor the power to run the meetings and call the meetings and not just go kiss babies and shake hands. That seems to be the problem. Everybody has talked about this and that, and everybody was so quick to fire the last city manager and so quick to fire the last city attorney that the current city manager was left with nobody to ask questions to except maybe her staff. And then we've had council members attack staff. If the staff is what is there for us to ask those questions, but we still must go through the city manager. Basically, each member of staff is an expert in their field. That seems to be where the problem is. We're trying to do their job too. I guess the thing I'm saying is why, pardon my language, why in the hell do we have a city manager if we're not going to let her or him do the job that they were hired to do and the charter state's doing? So that's my major bone of contention. Rodney, with all respect, the city attorney is not the person first. The first line of defense from council is the city manager, per the charter. If we want to change the charter, we already had this meeting a while back about changing the charter. If you want to change the charter, we can go to the citizens and try to change the charter. But until then, council, city manager, and then the attorneys, and all down the line. Thank you.
I just got to clarify an ambiguity which has been established over several visioning sessions, not this past one, but if you go back and read the minutes from the one last year and the year before that, there's always a question asked, why was there a land use attorney and why was there a regular city attorney? And even though the contracts, the express contracts themselves might have a little bit of ambiguity, mine says council and city manager, the previous attorney, Jerry Miller and Scott Shirley, indicated that the dichotomy that's been developed over a decade was that the city attorney represents the Destin City Council first and foremost, and we are your attorney. And we represent you at the meetings and whatnot. If the land use attorney also is your attorney, but if there's ever a conflict between staff and the council, she can provide them some input. But I think actually Ms. Kopp feels like she owes y'all a complete duty, and that's actually, she would probably beg to differ and say it's completely for the council. So I would say it's not exactly that clear because it's been established over time that the city attorney acts on behalf of the council first, and we were given direction to do something. So.
All right, I got a couple more council members that would like to speak. Before they do, I just want to remind us all that I'm trying to bring a focus and a goal to move us forward. Okay, so I really appreciate all the comments. I appreciate the motion. I appreciate the discussion, but I appreciate an attempt as we move for the however many more minutes left of this meeting that we try to stay focused on the intent and the goal of this meeting. Next is Mr. Braden. Next is first is Rodney Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. And that was my whole thought and what I've been on this council is I always go to the city attorney. Regardless of what Mr. Mahler just said, I'm going to that city attorney to make sure I'm doing what's right. Now, David Campbell sat right there at that joint meeting and made it perfectly clear that this council did not have the final say-so to those drawings or to that design. They could submit them, but they wouldn't do that. They would bring them to us and let us see them and get our blessing on them. But he made it perfectly clear to me that that did not have to happen. That no, we did not have the authority, we did not have to say the final say-so on the design of this park. So that's why I want my representation, which is the city attorney, to make damn sure that this council, or I have, can see those final designs and have the final say-so. Yeah, this is what the council wants. Send it off to the city manager, the staff, let them do their things. I'm not trying to take anything away from the staff or the city manager or the city attorney, anybody else. He represents me. That's who I can go to. I can't go to Tuffy. I can't go to Parker and talk about this kind of stuff. That's who I go to. If Mr. Marr wants to go to the city manager and forget all about the attorney, that's his business, but that's not what I'm going to do. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Braden. Ms. Ramswell.
If it's pushed, I didn't know I pushed it.
That's okay. Mr. Dixon.
Yeah, Mr. Mahler, I'm not saying anything negative about what you're saying, and you keep referring back to, even when we had our CRA meeting, you're referring back to us, we're riding staff and we're disrespecting staff, or we're doing whatever we're doing. And I have been on this council. I'm certainly not a senior member on this council, but I've been on the council for about 5.5 years now. In that 5.5 years, I've seen maybe once, but this was 4 or 5 years ago, where it got truly a little rough with one staff member, but I have yet to see where we have berated or done anything to our staff in these meetings that would be in any way considered to be trying to do them any harm, or trying to catch them in a lie, or try to do anything to discredit them. Now, if they take it that way, as I said before, sometimes tough questions have to be asked. And sometimes the answers may not be that easy to provide. But I've seen no berating of staff. Now, I'm sure if you ask members of staff, if we asked a tough question, they may think it not cool. But back to what we were talking about, what I discussed, I would love to see, there's nothing major coming up with this thing in the next 3 weeks, I don't guess, is there? I mean, is there? Why can't we give it hold on, Ms. Burns, why can't we give what I asked for a chance and let people meet with the land use attorney, the city attorney, the city manager, and our mayor behind the scenes, and see if they can come to us with something where we're not look like we're excluding anybody from anything. I mean, and so rather than, and I can't ask Mr. Braden to remove his motion, and I won't, but what I can say is that if we give just this a chance, that might be where we don't need this motion. It might be where everybody recognizes their boundaries and recognizes what it is that they need to do once these meetings take place. If we don't get anything fruitful out of these meetings, then we can certainly do whatever it is we want to do after that. But we're only talking about, we got a meeting Monday night, so the next meeting would be the end of July. Don't think anything pressing on this park is going to come up between now and then.
Mr. Dixon, would you make that in the form of a
yes, I'll make that in the form of a substitute motion, that we give this until the second meeting in July, which I don't know that date. Huh?
July 16th.
And have the city manager, the city attorney, the city land use attorney, and the mayor sit down and try to work out some of these issues.
I'll second that motion.
And I like the idea of the meeting. The only thing I would just say, whatever y'all vote on tonight, in my discussions with the county Restore Act person, they would like a little clarity. They would like some sort of motion from y'all tonight to make it clear that when I told them to hold off on submitting the application, that's what y'all want. Y'all don't want the application submitted. So just as long as...
Okay, we can do that in a separate motion, right? Can we do that so we won't make it this muddy?
So we have a substitute motion. Do I have a second? Okay, Mr. Marler, or Mr. Dixon made the motion. Mr. Marler seconded it. Discussion.
I just had one comment. I meant no disrespect to Mr. Braden, and Mr. Braden is on point that the city attorney does need to, gives us the legal advice, and that is not what I meant to say before, but that's the legal advice. Then the city manager should be involved on what to do from that point on. I have nothing against Mr. Braden or anybody else or anybody talking to the city attorney, including myself, because I've talked to him also. But he's there to advise us what the legalities are, which is true, and then from there we should work with our city manager, because that's what we hired her for, to implement what we want. And that's all I had to say.
Okay, we got a substitute motion. We have a second. Seeing, do you think that?
I just want to kind of clarify the motion, that substitute motion is...
Yeah, the motion is to have the city land use attorney, the city manager, and the mayor meet and try to discuss some of the issues that are going on with this particular situation behind the scenes, come up to us with the results of their discussions on the second meeting in July. Please, somebody remind me of that date again. July 16th, and make some sort of a recommendation from there.
Okay, I really just haven't, I don't know what kind of issues you're referring to, because it's this council's job to direct staff, give staff direction, or the city manager direction, give the attorneys direction. And I feel like that's what we've done tonight, is give them direction, because I mean, my feeling was that Mr. Campbell, it really seemed to me, and I felt like he told us at that meeting that no, we did not have the final say, so that he would bring it back, or staff would bring it back for us to look at it, but we did not have the final say so. And I'm just asking the city attorney in that motion, to make sure that it doesn't slip through and go on and get, because it seems like this drawing is being shoved down this council's throat since I've been on here. We've asked for changes and asked for changes, and we ain't got none, not the first one yet.
And I think
just
that we
want
can
to prevent that.
We can make a separate motion to make sure that we validate what was done by Mr. Burns recently, and making sure that we do not want the plans to go forward until we get it in a separate motion. But this motion, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff going on, and this is an effort to try to get everybody working together on the same page. That's all it is.
Mr. Dixon, and I appreciate your motion. I believe if I read your intent right, you're asking for us to come together and make a recommendation to this council for a chain of command, basically, on how to handle these issues.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Chain of command, what are you talking about?
Well, he's on this particular issue.
Recommended
Yeah.
on this particular issue, a recommended of who this council wants to represent on this park plan, the chain of command. Who's going to be the primary responsible?
I think it's merely, I don't know about the chain of command, to be honest with you, but
Tuffy
more so
said mediation, basically.
But more so to get some issues worked out behind the scenes that are, I think, basically hurting us. We're hurting ourselves sometimes by some of the issues that may be going on behind the scenes, and I just want to make sure that we're standing in the same trench, and that we're making sure that we've got a united front, and that we've got, with our attorneys and with our city manager and with you, so I'm just asking for mediation, basically, I guess is what you said. But I didn't really want to say that out loud, but that's what it is.
Okay, and that's fine. The spirit is good. And what we'll do is we'll try to come before this council in the spirit of cooperation for all of us to make this a well-oiled machine. That's what we can do. We've had a substitute motion, a second. We've had discussion, and now I got person who has not discussed all night long. Mr. Morgan,
Yes,
I was
sir.
about to call for a vote, but
I'm-
you have the floor.
I'm trying to get back to work, and,
After this
because I have a
vote,
job, Karen.
after this vote, hopefully we will
yeah,
all go back home.
hopefully. Tuffy, I'm going to vote no on your motion, only because I believe in supporting Rodney's motion as well, and because of Robert's rules, I do support mediation between all parties involved, but I also support Rodney's motion, because I do believe that Mr. Burns acted in the city council's best interest. I support mediation, but I also want to have the, make sure that Jeff, make sure that these plans are not submitted.
Can't that be a separate motion, though? I mean, can't we do that in a separate motion?
Sure.
And then you don't have to
Yes.
deny mine?
Yes, sir.
I think that's going to be the prudent plan. We're going to vote on this motion, and then we can make a second motion. And hopefully, after that, we can adjourn the meeting and because some of these issues we're going to deal with as we go through the process of developing the park. So,
Mayor, I've simplified the whole thing. It's, instead of stabbing people in the back, we should be backing them. I think that solves the problem.
all right.
Call
Thank
the
you.
question.
I have a call to question. We're going to take this to a vote.
Public comment, real quick, before you
Do
go.
we need to?
You do need to, yeah.
It's procedural.
Procedural, because
There's one. Don't forget to turn the button on, and don't forget to turn the button off, Mr.
Dewey Destin, 777 Spring Lake Drive. Just to clarify the motion again, are you asking the group to bring advice back to the council? You understand that then that meeting would be subject to sunshine law, right?
Mr. Attorney?
Any group that meets and brings advice back to the council is subject to sunshine law. I'm not an attorney, but
I think it's any committee we form.
Instead of bringing advice back, we'll just go ahead and meet and work out any issues that we have between us. Is that better for you? And then we'll let you know if it worked out or not. Is that?
There you go. Yeah, and I thought it was a committee established, but this may be a committee.
Okay, we have a call to question. Let's
Here
vote.
comes Jim.
Uh-oh.
Jim wants to talk now.
Mr. Woods, how are you doing, sir?
Jim Wood, 3790 Misty Way. I just want to make a quick comment before you vote. Having served 8 years in the city council, there is a way that business is conducted. Motions are made and majority votes are taken. That's how guidance is given to the city attorney, the city manager, and anybody else who needs guidance. The power of one councilman, two councilmen, or three councilmen is zero. If you make individual phone calls and emails, your power is squat. So if you don't make motions up here and take the votes to give the guidance, you've done nothing. So as long as we're going to make the motions and take the public votes to give the guidance, that's good. Anything under the table, behind the scenes, behind the door, whatever, is improper. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Any other public comment? Seeing none? Ray, if you clear me, let's go ahead and vote. Ayes have it, so moved. On the substitute motion passed. So Mr. Braden's motion does not. Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know what motion to make, 'cause it'd be the,
I'll make a motion.
it'd basically be the same one to make a stab at.
I make the motion that we accept Mr. Burns's work that was recently done with the county commission, and the fact is that we do not want plans submitted to the state until the city council has approved those plans. Is that good enough?
We have a motion?
Period, not to the, submitted, period, not to the state or the
Sir,
federal government.
to whoever, to submit them to anybody until we have basically reviewed the plans and make sure they meet our agreement.
We have a motion. I have a second. Hopefully, we've already discussed this ad nauseum. Seeing no further discussion, Oh, we do have a public comment.
Do you mind reading that again?
Ray, it's on you.
To accept the city attorney's work with the county commission and not submit the plan to, until the city council approval, until the city council approve the plan and design.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Seeing no further discussion, we have a motion, a second, and cast your votes. Unanimous decision, ayes have it. At this point in the meeting, I would like to adjourn. I think we've accomplished our goals of this special meeting and the focus, and I will adjourn it unless someone has anything else they would like to say.
Do you all want to go ahead and put things on the agenda for Monday? Do you all want to go ahead and put some of those items on the agenda for Monday, like discussing the timeframes of designing the park, you know, because I think there was confusion. I remember that meeting that Tetra Tech had indicated they would come back with some plans, but Mr. Oberdire, his memory might be better than mine. He seems to think it was go back first to the CRAA, they send some plans, then those plans get sent to Tetra Tech, and so I think maybe y'all should just clarify that maybe on Monday, what exactly.
The agenda's been posted, so won't we have to have a supermajority during the agenda?
No, you can add it now ahead of time. There's actually no requirement under the Sunshine Law for an agenda.
So we get to talk about this again on Monday night. Oh, great.
I was just bringing it up if y'all want to go and discuss.
Can we not just do that on Monday night with agenda, when we do the agenda approval?
You'll need a supermajority at that time if you do want to add it. That ends up to y'all. And one other thing, I discussed it with the mayor beforehand. Kim Comp wanted to make sure that just because there was an issue of a couple emails included in the agenda materials, and we think that didn't create a Sunshine Law issue, but these emails were from city council members individually to a representative of the county, and because they were included in the materials, there was just a question of whether or not that could create a Sunshine Law issue since y'all were provided the materials ahead of this meeting. In that vein of, I guess maybe we need a motion that y'all do this tonight, but the cure for any Sunshine Law issue, and we don't think there is one here, but we think being cautious is the best mode of acting on this, is at the next two regularly scheduled meetings that y'all just have put ratifying tonight's motions as an agenda item, and so then when it comes up, you can just discuss that nothing's changed, that y'all are ratifying what happened tonight. And it's a cure for Sunshine Law issues created by the Florida Supreme Court. It's not a black, like they didn't describe it in detail, but that is the way to sort of fix a motion that someone maybe later on in time could allege had a taint to it.
Would we do that under the consent agenda?
Don't put a consent agenda. You can even put it under my name if you want to, and I'll just remind y'all or the city managers. But it doesn't require tremendous discussion. But it can't be a simple rubber stamping under the case law. And a consent agenda is kind of rubber stamping. So.
Right. So basically, what you're saying is tonight we make a motion to ratify the motions that we passed tonight at the regular council meeting.
A motion to put on the next two regular agendas for the regular meetings, just the ratifying the motions that were made at tonight's special meeting.
And why do you have to do that twice?
Well, there's a case that they only did it once, and they said that wasn't good enough. And there's cases where they've done it 3 and 4 times, and there's a case, the Supreme Court case, they did it twice. And so I think twice is good enough in this situation.
Okay.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
We got a second. All in favor? All right, we have ayes have it. City manager.
Yes, sir. First of all, I would like to thank the council for taking time out of their schedule for the special meeting and for ratifying the actions of the city attorney's designee. That is really the only reason that I asked that the mayor have the meeting, is because we just needed to ratify the actions. That's all it was. I am also a little bit concerned and discouraged that there are members of the council that feel that given clear direction is not enough for the city attorney to take for the city manager to take the proper action, and that you would like the city attorney to make sure that the city manager is doing what has been told. I direct staff. They do not direct me. They do not take action unless I approve it. And I would just like to put it out there that if there is a lack of confidence in my ability to direct my staff or appropriately take action on clear direction from this council, then I would ask for this council to take action and not just speak about a lack of confidence in my ability to perform my duties.
Carice, I appreciate your comments. And I think some of what Tuffy said earlier today, and having a meeting with Kim and Jeff and myself and you, hopefully we can come up with some solutions that will help change that. You're the paid person on this whole deal, and you bear a tremendous amount of responsibility. I'm new on the job, and all my dealings with you have been professional and above board, and I really appreciate you. And I think that we can work through some of these differences. The two things I want out of a city attorney as a newbie in the elected official capability is I want a city attorney and a city manager that not will only cover my backside, especially to prevent me from making mistakes, but also to tell me no when I need to be told no. And that's, we're all adults, and sometimes we're not used to being told no. And when we're being told no because it violates Florida statute or because it's a procedural issue with county or city law or maybe the law of the land, I appreciate when you push back. You know, I've already sat with you and come up with some harebrained ideas, and you had to politely tell me, it's like, sir, you have no authority to do that. You can't do that. It'll violate Florida statutes. We'll face a lawsuit. And I think probably all of us need to kind of keep that in mind. I would really, really, really like to focus on making this council and the city and the staff a team to where we can best serve our... I don't think any of us are up here not wanting to serve the community, or we never would have went through this arduous task to get here. And so I think that's going to be real important from this point forward, is that we stay really focused on trying to improve our governance and improve our leadership, improve our confidence and our trust with each other. That's one of the things. I just listened to the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. And he's standing there talking to folks like myself, civilians. He's talking to airmen. There were some brigadier generals. He had 4 stars. He was the big dog in the whole meeting. And one of the key things he talked about was trust. From the airmen, from the community leaders, his brigadier generals, and in himself. And I think that's one of the things that hopefully we can focus on from this day forward. With that being said, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.